Hey everyone, so this weekend has been a really big weekend for Star Citizen. Not only did we get a ton of info on upcoming stuff with all of the CitizenCon content, but they also decided to push 3.15 into the PTU. So for this video, I wanted to take a quick look at some notable things in this update, but I'm working on watching through all of the CitizenCon stuff too, and I'm definitely going to make some videos about what's got me most excited in those. But yeah, for now it's time to explore 3.15. Before we start, if you end up enjoying this video, please consider leaving a like and or subscribing, or if you really want to help me out, you can become a member with that join button. I really appreciate your support. So one of the biggest changes in 3.15 has got to be the new way that inventory and items have to be managed. Instead of having the magical global inventory like we had before, you actually have to move items around physically, although at the moment you have this local inventory that's local to the landing zone, which you can access throughout the whole landing zone. But this even applies to things like armor that you can buy on the pledge store, so that means that now you have a location in the verse where these are stored for you to pick them up. So now, instead of just choosing an initial location to spawn in at the beginning of each patch, and it not really being a big deal, the screen that you get with every new patch lets you pick your permanent residence now, and choose where your ships and inventory are going to be stored. So yeah, it's actually a bit of an important decision. Now I did pick Orison here, just because I wanted to check out some of the new locations that opened up here in this patch, but in the live release of 3.15 I'll probably end up choosing somewhere else, maybe like Lorville. It's not as nice to look at, but I'll take that over having to spend forever getting out of Crusader's atmosphere anytime I forget something. Another notable change is that it seems like all of your ships are going to be stored at your permanent residence by default, so unlike before where if you hadn't requested one of your ships yet, it would be available anywhere in the verse, now they're all going to start off stored at your spawn location. That means that if you go somewhere else and you want one of your ships, you have to claim it and wait on that timer. This is going to take some getting used to and is going to be a little annoying, but it does move towards their goal of making you plan a bit more. I do wish this could have waited though until they had a system in place for you to be able to pay to have your ship moved, and I think that could be a pretty cool gameplay loop in the future. I think I'd enjoy being a ship valet. One thing I did notice though is that it seems like if your ship is stored at a major landing zone, you still have access to it from the orbital station above it, so like all of my ships that were stored in Orison showed up as accessible at Port Olisar. That definitely is a nice feature for now, and I think it makes a bit of sense as valeting your ship up from a landing zone isn't that much work. Now they have implemented a few things that help with this new and generally inconvenient system of inventory management. So this mobiGlas app called Niknax lets you see all of your items at any location, and it actually works quite well. There's a ton of filters you can apply to look for just specific items if there's one thing you want to find, and as long as the icons load in, it's a pretty nice interface. I hope that going forward they make something like this for shop inventories too, because with everything being physicalized, it's going to be a lot more important now to know if where you're going is going to sell you what you need, or if you'll have to bring it from somewhere else. Having an app like this for shops would be really helpful in figuring out where to go to buy things. While we're looking at the mobiGlas though, you've probably noticed a few other changes. A small one is the vehicle manager, which now informs you that you can only modify ships that are stored in the location that you're currently in. But a bigger change is the missing personal management tab. So with global inventory being gone, they've just put all the stuff from the personal management tab into the inventory tab. And if it worked how they intend it to, it seems like an awesome implementation. On the right side, you get to look at your local inventory for the landing zone you're in if you're currently in one. You have your player in the middle, which you can drag and drop items to and equip or unequip things. And on the left, you have your personal inventory. So like any backpacks or armor with storage would show up over there. Just a side note, I really like this new Grey Cat armor. The backpack is definitely going to be useful this patch, and I was tired of the Novikov being the only option. But yeah, once they get this inventory manager to be robust and responsive, it's going to be great I think, even with the current design, but the bugs make it really annoying to use for now. It is the PTU, so there's time for it to be improved, and I really hope they do because you're going to have to use this menu all the time in 3.15 since you lose all your stuff when you die, meaning you're going to be in here re-equipping things somewhat regularly. But yeah, some of the issues I encountered were at times I just couldn't equip or unequip things. Sometimes personal inventories for a backpack or armor would show up as being multiple 100% full, and removing items from them would do nothing. And the UI for splitting items needs some work so that it's visible all the time. So yeah, I like the idea of this new system, but since it's going to be important this patch, and it's going to get used all the time, I really hope they can make it a little bit less frustrating. Speaking of something that might add frustration, but also adds new gameplay, hospitals and medical gameplay have been implemented. So even with this being an early version, it already seems like there's a decent level of complexity with a ton of different new injectable healing items and a couple of healing devices. So I'm going to go more in depth with that once I have time to do a bit more testing, but the general idea is that now when you die, at least most of the time, you'll have a chance to be either revived by other players or taken to a hospital. And if you do die completely, you'll be spawning in a hospital, not in a hab like you used to. Thankfully, there are hospitals on some of the larger stations, so you can go there and set your spawn to avoid some headache of having to spawn at a landing zone every time, but you will lose your inventory and armor now when you die, if you don't get revived. I do look forward to the player interactions that this will allow, since you can set off a beacon when you're incapacitated to call for help, but you'll definitely want to be a bit more careful in 3.15. You'll also want to be careful with the new medications they've added, since they've also added an overdose mechanic. You can see me here after I administered all of the drugs that the machine would let me, and the effect is pretty funny. So yeah, I guess instead of healing people, you could probably also intentionally overdose your friends now, which could be a lot of fun. Either way, this combined with the inventory changes are going to make the game play very differently from other patches. I'm a little worried at the moment about the tedium that this might incur, but hey, it might just make the game that much more rewarding. Okay, so the last couple things I want to get to in this video are the new ships. Alright, so here's the 400i. So again, this just came out today, and I haven't had a ton of time to test it, but just from the layout and everything that's included with this ship, it seems like a pretty solid entry into the size category. It definitely doesn't have as much firepower as something like a Constellation or Corsair, but it has a good bit of utility, and it's also got that origin flair. I think people will be more divided on whether or not they like the looks of this thing. I personally like it, but it definitely is a little bit more unique than some of the other Origin ships, and probably not quite as flowing and sleek, so I can also understand people who find it a little bit ugly with the toothbrush sort of looking thing. Alright, so starting at the front here, we've got two buttons, and one of these actually opens a door that has an interesting feature of this ship, which is a special compartment for the Origin X1. Now that's going to be their hover bike, and that's not currently in the game yet. But yeah, this platform provides you just enough space to get that up in there, and there's not even a way into the ship from this platform, so once you load that on there, you're going to actually want to send the elevator up from here. And I believe at the moment, no other ship fits in there. I saw someone trying to load a Nox into there, and it didn't seem like it worked, and the Dragonfly definitely won't fit. I bet something like a Ranger would also fit in there, but that's not in the game yet either, so we'll just have to wait and see on that. But it is a nice feature, because like they've talked about, it lets you carry a vehicle and still have all your cargo space from that cargo bay that's in the back. Now this other button opens something that I'm a really big fan of, which is a front stairway for the ship. Now there's not a lot of ships in Star Citizen with this, but I think this is one of the coolest ways to enter and exit a ship is straight out through the front, so you just land someplace and walk right out of your ship to wherever you've landed, so that's already a plus for me. And then moving into the ship, it's a 2-level ship, and they've kind of segmented the habitation area and the utility sort of area. So this bottom area is the utility area. You can see up there, we've got the gravity generator, and then that compartment where the X1 would go. You've got a bunch of storage here for weapons. I believe some of these are going to be suit lockers. And this is going to be more and more important as they move towards physicalizing more things. And this whole area acts as an airlock, and you see they've actually built in a docking collar into the ship, which is nice. It seems to be one of the smaller sized ones and not one that you'd use to dock to a station. So we could be waiting a little while till we actually get to make use of this feature. One thing that was a little bit annoying at first though was that this upper button is actually the button for the outer staircase, and this lower button is for this door right here. So that was a little confusing at first. Not a big deal. And then moving on down this hallway, on the left here, we've got access to a whole separate room for components. It's kind of odd to me that they've got it separated into this contained room, but I guess that could be a fire management thing, or just to keep the ship feeling a bit more luxurious so that you don't have your mechanical parts right in your walkway, since this is the main way onto the ship. And then the same sort of thing over here, just more component doors. Alright, and then moving towards the rear of the ship, we have this cargo bay, which is actually pretty reasonably sized, except for the fact that it doesn't really fit vehicles that well, which is a little bit unfortunate. But yeah, as I was testing it earlier, I tried to fit a rock in here, and I hadn't landed on the flattest possible ground. So that could have been contributing to it a bit, but I just don't think there's quite enough height in here to fit something like a rock. So the largest sort of vehicles that you're going to be able to fit in here is something like a cyclone, which is a little bit unfortunate because at the moment the rock is really the only vehicle in the game that's worth carrying. And then also in this area, along with the cargo and this walkway that you have where you can make your way around the cargo, you have 4 escape pods that aren't functional yet, but it's nice to see that they're included for when that mechanic is needed. Alright, so that's the lower deck of the ship, and let's move on to the upstairs part, and you can do that with this elevator here, or also via this ladder, which is also nice to see in the case of losing power or something like that. So let's start with the rear of the ship, and this is a pretty well thought out area, I think. So on the exterior of the ship, the oval part with the bridge and the main canopy kind of continues around to the back here, and this is really nice and provides a great view of things, so you can see Crusader out there. And yeah, this is just kind of a nice living area. This is classed as an exploration / touring ship, so you've got this hollow table here, which in the future will probably be used for charting out routes and exploring. And then you've got a table and seats here for eating along with the small kitchen. And then over here you've got some pretty nice crew accommodations. They each have a bed and a closet and a good bit of room. I'd say that this is better than what you'd find on the 600i, so I hope that rework goes well. And then over across from the crew quarters, you have the captain's quarters, which is basically the same size, but instead of having a second bed in there, you have a desk for the captain, along with another storage closet. And then moving back towards the front of the ship, across from the elevator, you have the bathroom with the combination toilet and shower and everything. And what you'll probably see across the ship is a ton of controls for lighting and doors and keeping the doors either on automatic mode or sensor mode. So you can turn the lights off in here, which isn't necessary, but it's kind of a cool feature. Alright, and then moving up towards the front of the ship, we can make our way to the bridge right here. So you've got the pilot seat right here and then 2 remote turret operators. So I'll go ahead and take a look at those right now. And it's nice to see here that the buttons are actually labeled. If you check out the remote turrets on the 600i, it's kind of difficult to find the spot that you're supposed to hit to enter the remote turret. But here it's labeled for you. And these are actually reasonably strong turrets. You can see I've got 2 Panthers, so that's 2 size 3s. This one's obviously the underside mounted one, and it looks like it's right below the cargo bay. And both of these are at the rear of the ship. So if we make our way to the other co-pilot seat, we'll be able to see that. You can see into that recreation area from here, so that's where we are on the ship. And this would be great for fighting off some fighters that are trying to pursue you. So my first impressions on the 400i are that it's a really well thought out design, and I personally like a lot of the styling and choices like that front entry ramp, but like a lot of other Origin ships, its capabilities are a little bit lacking for a ship of its size and price. It only has 42 SCF cargo, which is less than the much smaller Cutlass. It's honestly kinda lacking in firepower, with only slightly more than the Star Runner, which is known for being pretty poor in that department. And while the X1 compartment is cool, hover bikes are a little iffy at the moment, and the X1 isn't even in game. Hopefully the hollow table in the rear will give this thing a little bit of exploration capability whenever that starts to be worked on, but for now this ship is fine and looks pretty cool. But if you're after performance, the Constellation series just seems to have better ships at the moment. Let me know what you guys think though. I am happy to see more ships in this medium-largish size category. I just feel like this one's a little bit lacking in some areas. Okay, so now I wanted to take a quick look at the last entry in the Crusader Hercules lineup. This is the A2 variant, which is the bomber variant, and it trades a lot of its cargo bay for the bomb dropping equipment for those massive bombs. But there's also a few differences elsewhere. So it's got a lot more turrets than the C2 or M2. So you got your usual remote turrets that you can access from this seat up here, which is the one at the top rear, and then you also have access to an underslung turret. You go to the other one. There's an extra seat here, and that's for another set of remote turrets. So yeah, that's just like the M2, where you have that extra turret seat. And then the A2 has an additional 2 turrets, but I think the controls for those are elsewhere, not located on the bridge. Just a quick look at the upstairs. We've got a habitation area that looks pretty similar to the M2. But we actually have a kitchen in here, which is nice. And then here we have access to those controls for those extra turrets. Okay, so from this remote turret, you can kind of get a good look at the weaponry that's on this ship, and pretty much all of this underslung weaponry is extra compared to what you'd find on even the M2 and definitely on the C2. So right now this is the control for a single size 5 weapon, and you can see there's another one over there, and then you can see there's 3 of these dual size 5 turrets across the rear. So this center one is standard, but these other 2 are only found on this A2 variant, and they're going to be controlled by the other seats in this turret room. So I'm going to assume that this is for the other side single size 5, so let's see, this should be for one of the dual size 5s. And yep, so here you can see those other dual size 5s, and then the single size 5 turrets. So yeah, all in all, this thing has quite a lot of firepower, although you need a lot of crew to man all of the turrets. You've got the pilot-controlled dual size 5 hardpoints, 2 dual size 4 turrets that are controlled by the co-pilot seat, another dual size 4 turret that's controlled by the turret seat on the bridge, which is what's also found on the M2, and then an extra 2 single size 5 turrets and 2 dual size 5 turrets. So yeah, even without the bombs, this is quite a formidable gunship. And it has quite a bit of shielding too. And even though it gives up a lot of that cargo space, you still have quite a well-equipped armory here. You could fill this up with a good amount of equipment. And then if we quickly head down to the cargo and bomb area, you can see there's still plenty of space here for quite a few vehicles, just not quite as much cargo because of the space that these bombs take up in the back here. These are absolutely massive, and as you can see from this little mistake here, they're quite powerful. So yeah, if you decide to test these out, make sure that you vacate the area after testing. So yeah, I don't think you'll be fitting a tank in through this rear access ramp, but the front access ramp should still be able to do that for you. And with smaller vehicles, you'll still be able to maintain that drive-through capability that the other models have. So I still think this ship is pretty overpriced. It's quite a high price point, and it's very close to the Polaris, so it's hard to justify. But they've done a lot to keep a lot of the capabilities of the other Starlifters available in this ship while giving you that extra firepower and these bombs. And depending on how homesteads work in the future and stuff like that, this could be a very useful ship. And I do still love the color scheme. Red and black just looks good on everything. Alright, so I want to finish out by just talking about how the PTU is performing in general. Now it is pretty early in the PTU cycle, so it is expected that things are still very work in progress, but this patch does seem to be pretty unstable. I think I got 3 or 4 30Ks just recording this video, and the overall frame rates and load times seem to be a little bit worse than 3.14. Again, this could just be because they pushed it out pretty early to try to get it here for CitizenCon, but yeah, if you're going to try it out, just be warned it might not be the smoothest experience at the moment. Overall though, this is a pretty exciting patch. Recently it seems like we've been having kinda small patches with minimal changes, but this one is really going to change pretty much everything. I think it might be tough at first getting used to this new inventory system and medical gameplay, but these are important changes that'll make the game much closer to what the end goal is. What do you guys think though? Are you excited for 3.15? And if so, what are you looking forward to most? Also, I'm most of the way through all of the CitizenCon content, and I think I'm going to make a video highlighting some of my favorite parts, but what did you guys think about it? Anyways, I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, please be sure to leave a like and or subscribe, or become a member. Now I want to thank my members GreatWatch93 and StarJump Starlet. Thank you so much for your support, and thank you all for watching.